Afternoon. My name's Carlin Calloway. I am one of the co-chairs of the Survivorship and Palliative Care Task Force with Bonnie Herman, and I am thrilled to be joining Ian and Sarah with the Colorectal Task Force for this final webinar in the series. This webinar series is helping to support the launch of the new Colorado Cancer Plan. You may find it on the Colorado Cancer Coalition website. Today, we're going to address Goal 2, which is talking about increased prevalence of healthy behaviors. We will explore food access in rural settings with some amazing panelists from premier organizations who are leaders within our state. Goal 8 of the Cancer Plan centers around improving physical, mental, emotional, behavioral, and financial well-being among those impacted by cancer. Today's objectives, on the next slide, please, are to define the concept of built environment, because for many of us, that is a new term. To understand how built environment impacts cancer prevention, diagnosis, survivorship, and palliation in a rural setting, and to articulate how an individual may impact their built environment. Next slide, please. It is my honor and privilege to introduce these three fabulous speakers. Steph Leonard is our built environment expert with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Jillian Laycock is the assistant town manager for the town of Lyman. And Mary Backram is the mayor for the town of Paonia. And I hope, Mary, I said that correctly and pronounced your town. So we look forward to hearing from these three speakers. And without further ado, I turn it over to Steph. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Steph Leonard. I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar and to the Colorado Cancer Coalition for inviting me to speak. I am a built environment coordinator with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And I have a background in urban planning and public health. So today I hope to increase your understanding of how the built environment, which we'll define in just a second, how that relates to public health. Next slide, please. So I recognize that the term built environment may be new to some of you. So I wanted to take a moment to establish a common understanding for us all. The built environment consists of the spaces and places where we live, work, learn, and play. The built environment is an important component of public health because our daily experiences determine our physical, mental, and social well-being. Next slide. The Colorado Cancer Plan calls attention to some key built environment themes that we'll discuss in a little more detail today. And if you missed our previous presentation, we dove into quite a bit more detail in that. So feel free to check that out afterwards. But the design of built environment influences our daily experiences, which again determine our physical, mental, and social well-being. Built environment design decisions directly impact factors like air quality, substance use, diet, physical activity, and cancer screening, which all have impacts on overall cancer risk. Built environment design can make it easier for people to be physically active, eat healthy, and connect socially as part of an everyday routine. And the final theme that comes through in the plan is that built environments that enhance health are not equitably distributed in our communities. So this is a component we need to think about when considering built environment changes. Will there be, when we design for health, will we end up creating additional disparities if we don't design with all parts of our communities in mind? Next slide. So I have on the screen, I'm going to share in the chat real quick. We have a slide deck. This slide translated to Spanish because there's a lot going on here and we wanted to make sure it was available to everyone. But this framework, it is the elements of a healthy, equitable community that's been developed by Change Lab Solutions. Our built environments are shaped by policies and planning decisions that determine where and how resources are distributed within communities. And this framework demonstrates how several elements interact to form a healthy, equitable community. So if you take a look at the gray boxes, things like healthy workplaces and quality jobs, safe, stable, affordable housing, these boxes include elements of healthy communities. And then if you look at the bottom, you can see various health benefits associated with each of these elements. All of these elements listed impact physical and mental health, whereas others might also impact things like safety or community cohesion. And we want to see a mix of all of these elements in our communities to ensure that people have the ability to lead healthy lives. If you want to advance it. So yeah, perfect. So to help contextualize these elements, let's think about just safe, connected transportation systems, which is really a glaring component when we don't have connected transportation systems. Folks are really aware of them. But in the ideal world, a safe, connected transportation system is one in which people of all ages and abilities can safely and efficiently travel by any mode of transportation to access the places they want and need to go. And so if you'll advance real quick for me, Ian. So these type of transportation benefits transportation systems can benefit communities in many ways, including seeing increases in physical activity, which has benefits on obesity rates, cardiovascular rates, diabetes, and cancer risk. We see improvements to mental health, overall motor vehicle safety, economic security, food access, healthcare access, and social connections. So there's really transportation reaches well beyond what we might first imagine. And then if you advance one more, research shows that these types of transportation systems help decrease asthma rates as well as substance use by making it easier to get around and healthier. Next slide, please. So why are we just now hearing about built environment in public health and healthcare settings? I often ask myself the same question, considering the fact that public health and urban planning have really similar origins during the Industrial Revolution. So I want to take a moment. Does anyone recognize the story that these graphics are alluding to? I have on the screen. You can put it in the chat or hop on if you have any ideas. All right, hearing none. Perfect, Chris, you got it. John Snow. So if you're not familiar with who John Snow is and what John Snow did, this graphic is referencing the 1854 cholera outbreak in London, in which John Snow, a physician, he was convinced that the outbreak was caused by something other than bad air, or miasma, which is what the common belief was. So he started to use maps and records to track the spread of disease back to its source, which in this case, it was the Broad Street water pump. And if you take a look at the map, I know it's kind of hard to see, he slowly, through mapping, figured out where incidences were occurring and what the source might be. So For public health, Snow's ideas remain at the foundation of how we find and stop disease all over the world. It kind of led to some of the foundations of epidemiology. And then in urban planning, public health crises like these in industrial cities helped highlight the importance of strategically developing urban areas, as well as any areas in which people are living and working, and laid a foundation for future land use regulations, which we are still practicing in the field today. Next slide, please. So while both of these fields, urban planning and public health, sprang from similar origins, our practitioners have adopted different methodologies that led to the fields to kind of develop along parallel paths. It's only in more recent decades, with the development of concepts like social determinants of health, that there's been more regular interdisciplinary collaboration. As we are continuing to learn, health is more than just healthcare. Healthcare is one piece of the pie. We see that physical, social, and economic contexts account for the majority of our health outcomes, 80 to 90%, including things like education access and quality, economic stability, social and community context, neighborhood and built environment, as well as healthcare access and quality. So the work that I do focuses in on that neighborhood and built environment piece. So if you'd advance for me, I want to dive into that a little more. There are several variables within neighborhoods and our built environment that can influence health outcomes, such as policy and implementation for housing, transportation, safety, parks, playgrounds, walkability, zip code, geography. It's common to say that your zip code might have a greater impact on your health outcomes than your genetic code, and that's as a result of these social determinants of health. And while I am practicing in a public health position, I don't have the power to make some of these changes to neighborhoods and built environments. So as a public health professional, I work with community members and local community governments to develop partnerships in which we can use best practices to make changes and provide funding over time for these changes. The next slide. So that's what leads us into the bulk of our discussion today. I mentioned funding on the last slide. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has many ways that we fund communities, and within 2 different programs, we have an opportunity to allot money for quick win projects. So we have funding through, well, first let me dive into what a quick win project is. Quick win projects help provide essential streetscape components that may get value engineered out of larger scale improvements. These are small grants up to $5,000 for small scale or temporary changes that may have large impacts on promoting things like physical activity and comfort while being physically active. And from the public health perspective, this is an essential component of chronic disease prevention. And the goal of these types of projects is to provide momentum, either to implement some policy changes, healthy built environment policy changes that already exist, or to lead to those types of new policies in communities throughout the state. So through the Comprehensive Cancer Control Program, we were able to provide funding for some quick win projects this year, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Next slide, please. So CDPHE has been funding quick win projects for the last 4 years through 2 different programs that are funded through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So one is the Comprehensive Cancer Control Program, and the other is the State Physical Activity and Nutrition Program. So over the last 4 years, we've been able to commit funding to 42 community-based quick win projects throughout the state. And then in April of this year, we opened up our year 4 application and received 63 applications and over $260,000 in funding requests, which clearly highlighted the need for these types of funding opportunities. And we have the opportunity to hear from 2 of the communities that were funded this year later on in the webinar. Next slide, please. So this year, through the Colorado Cancer Control Program, we were able to fund the communities that were listed on the screen. Today, again, we'll hear from the town of Lyman and the town of Paonia about their projects. But if you take a look on here, you see that there's projects all throughout the state, and we were able to provide nearly $30,000 in funding for communities to make small-scale improvements to their built environment in ways that will ideally promote health and positive health outcomes over time. So if you have any questions about any of the ones listed, the projects listed on the screen today that we're not hearing from, I'm happy to answer those questions after the presentations. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jillian Laycock with the town of Lyman.
Good morning, everyone. As you heard, my name is Jillian. I'm the assistant town manager in the town of Lyman. We are about an hour and a half away, pretty centrally located on the Eastern Plains. We're an hour and a half from Denver and Colorado Springs. We have 5 highways converge. We're a major hub for transport passing through. And so 287 and I-70 converge on our town, and 287 is actually our main street. So I'm going to share a systemic approach of what we're taking in regards to our projects. But our Quick Win project, which we're very grateful for the funding for, was able to buy the community 2 bike fix-it stations. I hope everyone on this call has seen them, but if you haven't, get one in your community. There's a bike pump and there's multiple tools to fix bicycles. So it's one of the foundations of strategic implementation for alternate choices in transportation. So the number 1 disease in Lincoln County, which is where our town is located, is type 2 diabetes. A close second to that is cancer. Developing a healthier built environment on the rural Eastern Plains. A lot of people go, well, how is this done? It's the long game, chipping away at achieving specific goals, one step at a time. In Lyman, that is building a healthy and resilient community into our community planning and addressing the long-term impacts from multiple angles. So how can we impact those through local governments at a local government level, municipal as well as county, into the built environment? As you know, all of us that work in government really love or hate the word planning. It impacts and revolves around our daily lives. Many local governments have plans sitting on the shelf. For plans to be successfully implemented, you need 3 things. 1, leadership within the local government, ownership of the plans to implement those plans. 2, the plan must align with the community values, or it's not going to be accepted and go anywhere. And 3, partnerships. The town of Lyman completed its comprehensive plan in 2016. This was a 2-year planning process with extensive involvement from the community members, the town employees, and the elected officials. This plan identifies key built environment goals to develop healthier, more inclusive community environment. For success of these improvements, they need to be low maintenance for the town employees, as well as a high return for the residents. In addition to the infrastructure components like water and wastewater systems, key improvements to achieve community health and ultimately affecting community-wide heart health, diabetes, and cancer prevention is a multi-system approach for Lyman. These have included things in our comprehensive plan like developing a pump track for bicycle riding, skate park. We're hoping to do those in 2024 and 2025. A recreation center, a new swimming pool, easily accessible public seating, pedestrian wayfinding, accessibility with a wide variety, accessibility to a wide variety of recycling, a 3-mile soft surface trail system, biking amenities throughout the town. A current large project that we're working on is including developing a capital funding stack for sidewalks through our main street, which we do not have sidewalks consistently throughout the town or the Main Street district. That includes resurfacing of some roads, which are currently dirt, to continue to develop pedestrian and biking corridors throughout our key anchor locations, and really focusing on the east and west end of our Main Street. So what have we achieved so far since 2016? The last few years of state funding have really made a big impact on our community and helping us really achieve these goals. We put it out to our constituents and our residents for a sales tax increase. In 2018, it failed. That would have funded a new recreation center, which, like I said, it failed, so we're not building that yet, and we hope to in the future. We did go back in 2020 to the voters, and they did pass a recreation tax, which has helped us achieve a lot of these goals in matching funds. So we're currently under building a new swimming pool, which includes a more modern approach of accessibility. We have ramps going into our swimming pool, not just play features for the kids. So a lot of our elderly and less physically active community members are really excited about having access to this really centric facility in our town. We have brought in more public seating, pedestrian wayfinding we've achieved, and recycling. And a lot of these components have been funded by different CDPHE grants, which we're very grateful for, as well as DOLA and CDOT grants. So if anyone has questions about those, feel free to contact me anytime about that. On our slide here, I have showcased our bicycle fixture stations and where we have placed them, so you can see how they're centric in our community. So the middle dot on the screen with the little bicycle fix-it station sign is actually where our new swimming pool is being built, and that is right in the center of town. Our other one is located in a less used area, but an area that we are focusing on developing and really trying to provide more amenities to our community. The red stripes on the screen show where we're developing our sidewalks and pedestrian and biking corridor. So you can see how we're strategically placing these amenities in locations to really continue to develop the systematic approach of developing a healthier community. From a local government level, diabetes and cancer prevention are not necessarily the primary marketing message to our residents, but it is the long-term benefit by impacting the systemic behavior of our residents long-term through providing accessibility to these types of amenities. What is kids play and family time today becomes a healthy habitual way of life in the future. All of these adaptations are equally important to improve and enhance our town's built environment, both large and small projects to increase the healthy behaviors in our communities. Decreasing the prevalence of overweight and obesity through our built environments by enhancing the alternates to transportation options is really our primary focus with those long-term impacts. Thank you. And as you can see on this slide, these are the 2 bicycle fix-it stations that I mentioned. And you've already seen the locations that they've been installed, and thought I'd show you a couple pictures of you know, how they're placed, what they look like, and really how you can improve bicycling from kids on up. They're high quality, they're a really good product, and we're very proud to have them located in our community. We've had a lot of compliments on them already, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Backern, and I'm the mayor of a little town called Paonia. We are about 1,447 people in our little town, and we are located on the western slope off of Highway 133. It's a North Fork Valley, so it's got beautiful mountains all around it, as well as we've got a thriving organic farming community and good access to really high quality foods. One of the things that we were looking for is to increase the shade on our streets. Many of our residential streets have a lot of shade, but our business area did not. So next slide, please. So with the money that we got from CDPHE in this grant, we were able to purchase 5 trees and to get the root barriers and amendments that would enable us to plant them in our downtown area without having them buckle the sidewalks or interfere with our water system or sewer systems. So we managed to plant 4 in our downtown area, and then we took one out to one of the local grade schools and we planted it there. We had a partnership between the Paonia Tree Board, which were absolutely wonderful in helping us find high quality, drought resistant trees that would fit the spaces that we asked them. And the North Fork School of Integrated Studies was really wonderful in helping us place the other trees and having the kids help plant them. Next slide. So why did we do this? This is a picture of our downtown corridor. It's only a couple of blocks long, but it has basically very few trees on it. And it gets incredibly hot in the summertime, especially in the afternoons. We have tried to do some street closures and outside festivities, and people just fry, even under tents in the downtown area. So what we wanted to do was to put more shade into this downtown corridor. The community, we did a CDOT demonstration project where we reconfigured the travel on this downtown corridor and added bike lanes and a couple other things. And while the community wasn't thrilled about some of the stuff that we did, they really wanted to see more trees on Grand Avenue. If we got shade out there, we could get more people walking from store to store instead of driving. And literally people will pull up to one store, drive a block, and then get out and go to the next store. So we want to increase the foot traffic and comfort of people as they shop, and also to increase people coming to the downtown area versus driving someplace else. We installed, thanks to the CDOT grant, we installed some beautiful benches and places for people to sit. Now we just need the shade for them to be able to sit there comfortably. Next slide. So our hope is, again, to increase the foot traffic of people being downtown. If we have people spending time sitting and interacting in the business area, they're more likely to go into the local businesses and support them. That, as I said, the traffic sometimes is pretty intense in our little bitty business corridor, and people will drive up, park, and then leave their vehicles running while they go inside a store. And we want to reduce that. We want people to be able to park under a tree, turn off their car, and then walk from store to store. And while our community is a very physically active community, at least in the middle ages and a certain segment of the senior population, We have an aging population that worked in the coal mines that has a lot of respiratory and other physical ailments. So the more we can make our outdoors amenable to all segments of the population, then the better the health in our entire community is going to be. And then as we plant more trees in this downtown corridor, we want people to see and say, yes, let's plant another tree. Let's make a little parklet that maybe takes away 2 parking spaces, but we can put a bench in a comfortable place for people to rest. Next slide. So the health outcomes we are looking for is absolutely more movement. There are a lot of cyclists that go through our community, but our pedestrian traffic is much less than it could be. And as long as we can get people up and moving, we're going to have better health outcomes across the board. Again, we want people to sit down and interact in our public places. The social interaction is also a huge disease preventer. And the more we can facilitate that, the happier we are. We want to reduce the traffic and the air pollution that we get. While we have lovely breezes that blow much of it away, still the more that we can reduce that pollution, the better off we're going to be. And then finally, being at the altitude we're at, skin cancer is a very high incidence in our area. For one reason, because we have the farmers who are out in the sun all day working on their farms, but also people just walking around town. It's a danger that we want to reduce. So thanks to the CDPH grant, we started this and hope to continue it in the coming years as we move along. We want to not only increase the trees in the downtown area, but we want to line all our streets so that, and to increase benches out as people walk into town so that those who cannot walk all the way into town can stop, take a rest in a lovely shady place, then continue their journey, and therefore increase physical activity, social activity, mental health issues, and reduce disease. Thank you. You can move on to the next slide.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, both Jillian and Mary. We appreciate having you here. Your perspective is, I think, much more valuable than anything else that we're sharing in these presentations. So thank you for, again, participating. And we want to open up for a little facilitated Q&A. We have a couple questions that we prepared. The Colorado Cancer Coalition prepared in advance, but if you have additional questions, please put them in the chat, and feel free to hop on as well and just ask the questions out loud. But the first that I have for both of you is, what do rural communities want other regions to know about their communities and health needs? How do they differ from, for example, an urban community?
For Paonia, it's isolation is our big issue as far as healthcare needs go. The closest clinic we have is 10 miles away, and doctors, the only treating doctors in town are 10 miles away at the very least. Our hospital is 33 miles away. So having transportation issues to get people where they need to go, and then with our aging population, as they cannot drive anymore, it increases the issue. So having a better healthcare system would be a huge benefit to our area.
I can only second that opinion. I'd say access is a huge challenge for us. We have one regional hospital. It's called Lincoln Health. Our hospital serves the footprint, which is the same as the size of the state of Maryland. We do have aging facilities. I think funding and reimbursement rates with the our national healthcare, not that we have national healthcare, but what I want to say in the most respectful way is reimbursement rates, for a lot of people that are on Medicaid and Medicare resources are challenging, which does affect the funding of the hospital, which then affects access to healthcare from a pedestrian standpoint. So I think those are some of our really big challenges. Our hospital does have clinics in the larger communities. When I say larger communities, Lyman is our largest community of 2,073 people. And we really value having clinics in our locations. EMS resources are a challenge. Almost all of our ambulance services are volunteers. All of our pre-hospital 911 response is volunteer. So having access to any type of healthcare, a lot of people, if they call the ambulance and need help, the ambulance is going to be 20 to 30 to 40 minutes away, one way. So there's great distances between each other and our facilities. So I think that's definitely a challenge. Obviously, all of the rural broadband initiatives do help. Everyone is focused on supporting and helping the development of telehealth and telemedicine. We can't wait for the day that is implemented, but we're still far away from that. So I would say that is definitely one of our biggest challenges. Another one, and obviously you have all done your research ahead of time with this program series, is access to fresh and healthy foods. We're immersed in farming and ranching agriculture here. It's our #1 economic driver, but it's surprising to some people that we do not have access to healthy fruits and vegetables. We're ranching cattle and growing wheat and corn, but that doesn't always produce fruits and vegetables that end up on our grocery store shelves in an affordable way, or necessarily the freshness of what you'd get in King Soopers on the Front Range. So those are definitely our two health impacts here.
Thank you, both of you. I'm going to take a quick moment to encourage anyone who's on the call, if you're able, we recommend coming on camera just to make this a little more interactive if you're able to. So you both have already touched on this component a little, but narrowing in a little on cancer more specifically, is cancer prevention a top priority in your community and, kind of from that local government perspective?
Well, we haven't focused on that specifically. We are starting to redo our comprehensive plan. The last one was in 1996, so it desperately needs to be changed. But again, with our aging population, we see incidents of cancer increasing rather dramatically outside of the coal mining industry. So having some kind of focus on that in our comprehensive plan, I think is smart at this point. But at this time, no, we're not focused on that. We have other challenges.
Steph, to answer your question, I and to again echo what Mary said, we have a huge amount of skin cancer. I don't know anyone that hasn't been touched by cancer in our communities, whether it's skin cancer or some other form of cancer. It is a conversation topic every day, but not necessarily from a strategic planning point at our local level in government. We are facing crisis of failing infrastructure. Water and wastewater are our biggest concerns on a daily basis. That is what our leadership is discussing. That is what local elected officials are discussing. And if we can't flush our toilets and access fresh, healthy drinking water, we don't have communities. So unfortunately, we don't even have the opportunity to really have a conversation around cancer prevention. We do rely on our healthcare leaders and our healthcare system to address that for us, as well as the built environment adaptations that you are driving and that we spoke about. I do think conversations and programs like this from the CDPHE, as you infiltrate our rural communities more with conversations about that, I think it will help. in a huge way. But it's the same impacting of systems. It's going to be a long-term approach, and the more we have you and your program exposed on a local level, the better. And then that can be implemented into those planning strategies, like I shared about what Lyman is doing. But unfortunately, we're just putting out fires trying to not have sewer lines collapse. So, that is what every single small rural community outside of the Front Range areas is facing, I think. And Mary's nodding her head. So
yeah. I would agree with Jillian completely. Our water and wastewater systems are in desperate need of upgrading. And if we can't provide that basic that basic need to everyone, then everything else comes secondary to that.
Hi, this is Carlin, and it's not every day that you talk to a mayor and a city planner. So as somebody in healthcare, it is just so fantastic to connect with you and learn from you. I wanted to ask about indoor fitness facilities, and with snow and ice and heat, Mary, you touched on people walking, but where do people walk? What about the ADA, American for Disabilities accessibility?
Well, we don't have any indoor facilities. We have one small gym that is more or less in the center of town, but it's a private gym. Well, I take that back. There are two places where you can work out. They're both private, so you have to pay the fees to get in. Thankfully, one of them is really generous to seniors, so they do take care of that. People walk on the streets, and like Jillian said, while we don't have many dirt streets, we don't have sidewalks, and you find people walking down the middle of the street, even in the winter time. We have some diehard cyclists who put the studded tires on their bikes and bike around town in the wintertime, but most people are not that brave. So, the active people can go up to the mountains and they can ski and snowshoe and do that, but the seniors don't have that ability. The senior center has been trying to step up and offer movement classes for seniors at the senior center. And they've been very successful in that regard and have gotten a lot of help from Region 10 and other places to continue those programs, especially Next 55 and some AARP funding as well. So being able to have those going on year round is a wonderful thing. Again, COVID really hit us as far as some of our programs like Meals on Wheels had to be shut down, and even now it's only slowly coming back to bring food to the senior population who can't get out a lot. So it would be wonderful if we could have an indoor facility at some point, but financially we are just not there.
again, the same for Lyman. And actually the entire Lincoln County, we do not have any public gym facility in our county, nor do we have any private gym facilities in our county. So a couple communities have small walking trails and intermittent sidewalks, depending on the location of where you look in the community. So our primary focus is to get sidewalks for accessibility to key locations, key recreation locations, and then key employment locations. We do have people walking down Highway 287, which is our main street, and without continuous sidewalks that they can safely get to work. So that is our priority from a sidewalk infrastructure standpoint. As I mentioned, our 2018 tax initiative failed. That would have built a recreation center as well as a community building in one. Drastically, it failed by 4 votes. It was heartbreaking, and a lot of people were very disappointed. In 2020, the tax initiative that passed was less. It was a smaller amount. And a lot of people are asking me on a daily basis where the rec center is, because they don't understand that the second one that passed didn't fund a rec center. It funded a swimming pool, and we were going to build a new community building with the amount that we were able to bond. Unfortunately, due to the economic impacts this year, we will not be able to build a community building. We need to finish our swimming pool, and that's all of the funding we'll have. Hopefully in the next couple years, as we accrue, that tax income and start paying that off, we'll be able to plan to build a community building. We have asked the designers of that project to include a very small room. I don't know even what that's meant to look like anymore. Maybe it'll have a treadmill in it. If it will be one, it'll be the only publicly accessible treadmill in Lincoln County for 6,000 residents. So it's a major challenge. The funding numbers are not there. In the community, my hometown community, we as a community group, some of us got together and crunched the numbers to try and pull some funding together to open a small gym that would be administered by a group of volunteers. And unfortunately, the financial numbers are not there to cover the costs. So I've been in local government here in Lincoln County for about 6 years now. And unfortunately, it is going to take a local government facilitating some kind of rec center to provide that. But the funding's not there, unfortunately, as well. And we have a lot of wind. So you mentioned heat and snow and ice. Add the wind component to that, and it's pretty treacherous to be outside on most days. So we desperately need indoor recreation. Thank you.
If anyone, any of our attendees have any success stories related to building out indoor facilities, especially in rural areas, like how you funded it, who your partners were, like we encourage you to jump in. We know that it's a very common issue and challenge that that rural communities face. I have one additional question I wanted to ask both of you. And again, this is one that we've kind of touched on, but like a little more information. How can public health practitioners and like healthcare providers get more involved in local government? Like how I was talking about in my slides, I might know the information about how the built environment impacts health outcomes, but as a public health professional, there's limit to my influence in actually making the change. But how have you seen effective partnerships being built between health and local government?
Well, the one thing that we had is because our hospital was not I forget the term, where they can get increased Medicare rates, Medicaid rates, because they're a designated local hospital. They had not received that. And so the hospital board actually came to the town board and requested a letter, which we happily wrote for them, that explained the difficulties of getting from our communities into the hospital in the wintertime. And it really helped them get that designation. So if healthcare providers come to the town board, they get a lot of attention because of who they are and what they represent. It's just we don't see it often, and that's the thing. It's like there's so much on our plate all the time. Reaching out for something that is beyond what our current desperate needs are tends to fall by the wayside.
I think that's a very fine statement, Mary. It does. Our desperate needs, so what falls by the wayside. I can proudly share that our hospital CEO attends our board meetings. If he is not able to attend, one of the other leadership team members out of the hospital here attends. They provide constant updates to really try and bridge that gap between community and local hospital. I think another way to be connected, and that's on a local level, another way to be connected, Steph, I was thinking, gosh, I would love, I do a lot of regional meetings. I would love for you to come and do that presentation that you just did to our, to our regional meeting. And that way you're hitting more of a audience than just one town. And you never know how things happen as a regional catalyst. We're really focused in our region to work together across county lines because we have such limited resources. So I think, it's really just finding the community champions within each community. When we have small populations, there's usually about 10 or 12 people who volunteer in every aspect of the community. And it's really just finding those. They're usually the entrepreneurs, the elected officials, the people volunteering on community development organizations. And that will get you connected or in front of the right people. Zoom, thanks, not necessarily thanks, but as a result of the pandemic, almost every small local government now has Zoom capabilities, which was not the case 2 years ago. And, if you can share a couple evenings across rural communities, getting in front of elected officials is the #1 biggest impact. And then broadcasting to a regional level is another. Most of our communities have organizations that we're lucky enough in Lyman that we have a couple extra people on our administration to be able to do projects like this. Our smaller brother and sister communities, it's usually volunteers through nonprofits that fill that gap. So that's what I would recommend.
Wonderful, thank you. I had 2 thoughts as you both were speaking. So Mary, you had mentioned first, like hospitals using community benefit dollars. I think that's what you might have been alluding to. So hospitals, nonprofit hospitals that can receive community benefits funding. And one example of that in Colorado of using that funding in partnership to see built environment change is the town of Rangeley. I know this is probably dumping a lot of information at the last minute, but Mary had mentioned during her presentation that she'd received a Revitalizing Main Streets grant from the Department of Transportation in Colorado. Rangeley also did. And they were able to use funding from Revitalizing Main Streets and community benefits from their local hospital to do an intergenerational park in their community. So that's like, a creative idea if those funds are available, and like sufficient enough. So that's something like if anyone has questions about, I'd be happy to connect with you afterwards. And then Jillian, to your point, I again would be happy to present or connect you with the best person to present within your regional networks to provide, just keep this conversation going and keep expanding just this perspective of the fact that, the social determinants of health and like the spaces that we build and live in really are where we're seeing the most impact on our overall health outcomes. And I see a few questions or one question in the chat from Carlin. What can CDPHE do to help with the water and sewer issues?
Can I interject for that? I'll talk on CDPHE's behalf here because this is, I'm so immersed in this. And I do not fear. CDPHE is doing everything they can. It's with all of the infrastructure funding there, and besides in the new infrastructure bills, historically they are between CDPHE, Department of Local Affairs, they are literally the backbone of how small communities fund almost all of their sewer and wastewater projects. The challenge right now is navigating through this next influx of funding. There are so many, they are absolutely activated to respond and support all of us through this. It's just the challenge is there's not enough engineers, there's not enough contractors, there's not enough plastic pipe, and a small component of matching funds that we all have to have skin in the game of. A lot of us don't have because of the recent tripling of project costs. So I don't want to paint a picture that CDPHE is not doing their job, because they're an incredible support for all of our communities.
And I would echo completely what Jillian has said. They have been a lifesaver for us, and we, they put on, well, I guess the Office of Recovery put on a wonderful seminar in Glenwood Springs last week for the small rural communities on the Western Slope about all the funding opportunities and how to take part in them. And CDPHE was an integral part in there and did several breakout sessions so people could specifically ask some questions. And they have been on our side and working with us hand in glove for years. And so absolutely CDPHE is our first, them and Dole are our go-to guys. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you, for that. I actually think you probably had a better response than I would. So I'm like, we're a big team. I don't really know the
Huge.
best.
That's why we jumped in for you.
Yes.
But Mary, I don't know if the conference that you attended last week, they sent out any resources, but if those are available, I know we'd love to share that out to folks afterwards too. It seems like that'd be a valuable resource.
Well, as soon as I get my email fixed so that I can actually send stuff again, I'll be happy to send you the links they sent us with
Wonderful.
all of that stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we are at 12:30. Thank you so much to Jillian and Mary for coming and presenting and dialoguing with us today. We will make sure to send out the fully translated slide deck and the recording, which will also be available on the Colorado Cancer Coalition's website. Thank you all so much for attending today. And please take the evaluation.
Thank you. Have a great day.